All set?
Yeah.
Well, good morning, and I'm very pleased to be here with Deputy Mayor Anna Bailão and virtually with our councillor colleague Gary Crawford. It's been a month, only a month, since the City Council approved the expedited delivery of Phase 1 of our Modular Supportive Housing Initiative, which will see the creation of 250 housing units in total on a very rapid timetable. We're here now to let you know that the program is well underway and that we're on track to provide stable, affordable, high-quality housing and support services to a group of 100 individuals, the first group of 100 individuals experiencing homelessness by the fall of this year, with more to come. Not only is this timeline a demonstration of our commitment to getting affordable housing options available as soon as possible and as quickly as possible, but that our work on the ongoing priorities for our city beyond COVID-19 does not stop and has not stopped during the course of the emergency. They speak to the commitment we have to building up our city. And I want to thank Deputy Mayor Bailão, I want to thank the city staff and others for working over the last few weeks during the emergency to make sure that we can keep this project moving forward and ultimately bring it to fruition. I know that I had asked the city staff to move this forward at lightning speed to prove this was something that we could do in the City of Toronto on a rapid-fire basis, and they have not disappointed. A key component of being able to deliver this program quickly was our ability to identify the sites as quickly as possible. City staff and the staff at Create TO have been very busy evaluating city-owned sites across Toronto, looking at a variety of factors, including local demand for affordable housing, development potential of the different sites, local infrastructure such as sewers and roads, because the modular housing itself can be, after it's installed, can be hooked up immediately to those services if they're available, access to public transit, access to health and other community services, and zoning and other planning considerations. After a tremendous amount of evaluation, we are now recommending the following sites for Phase 1 of this initiative. The first, at 11 Macy Avenue in Ward 20 for 56 bachelor apartments, and the second at 150 Harrison Street in Ward 9 for 44 bachelor apartments. This is the former site of the 14 Division Police Station. These sites are in areas that are close to transit, they're close to shopping, and they're close to other community services. We want people to have stable housing in areas in which they want to stay on a longer-term basis. We are here to create complete communities, places people can call home. From the beginning, I have called for more supportive housing options. And supportive housing is, of course, of necessity, a key part in almost every case of the healthcare system. It is a part of our housing action plan. I know how vital it is for our city's most vulnerable to have access to stable and affordable housing. Because this is a prefabricated housing unit that is made in a factory here in Ontario and then transported to the site where it is assembled, we can implement it at a lower cost and in a much shorter time frame than traditional construction. So these two initial projects in this very important initiative, this modular housing initiative, were approved at the end of April. A month later, we have located sites for the two initial projects. We are still in the design phase of the project itself in terms of the units, and certain fixtures and other materials that take time are being sourced and ordered. But the manufacturing of the actual housing units themselves will be commencing at the end of June, and construction on the site itself will start in mid-July. I have visited the manufacturing facility, the home to the longest-standing provider in the Canadian modular housing industry, and I can assure you these are people that are used to getting their jobs done on time and on budget. And so I have no doubt that once the design work is completed and the manufacturing begins, these units will be available to us on a timetable that would see us ready to open the doors and have people move in the early fall. People will actually be moving into these modular housing units. And so what we have is a development that from concept to move in happens in a period of months, not years. And that is something that I think is going to be a model to us of how we can move forward much more rapidly, not always with modular housing, but to move these things forward much more quickly. It will allow us to get affordable, supportive housing to people as quickly as we ever have. Now, our work will not stop at this project, of course. It is really just the beginning. There's a real need to find other creative and modern ways in which we can address the housing challenges faced by our city. I will continue to ask my City Council colleagues, together with Deputy Mayor Bailão, to support modular housing plans, but also the general creation of more affordable housing options through initiatives like this one and Housing Now, which we spoke about last week when we identified at Council some additional sites for those projects to move forward. These are crucial projects that will affect positively the life of the residents of the City of Toronto. They will provide residents access to stable, affordable, high-quality housing as quickly as possible. We know that providing good quality supportive housing is good for everyone, and that modular housing is a way to make that happen faster. And these projects are meant to show us just how well we can do that here in the City of Toronto and how well they work, and to allow us to refine these initial projects as we go forward with more. Now, these projects, these first two in modular housing and many other things we're doing for affordable housing in the City of Toronto would not be possible without the help of the Government of Canada through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and in particular their Affordable Housing Innovation Fund. This demonstrates the power of working together and the power of having support from the other levels of government. In fact, it isn't just power, it's something that's an absolute necessity. It's a great example of a partnership between our city and the Government of Canada. While I'm here, I also want to encourage the province to join in, and they should, quite properly in this case, be making a commitment to provide support through the funding of our operating costs, as well as health-related support services and housing subsidies at these sites. And that is because, as I mentioned earlier on, that these partnerships work well when everybody picks up the roles they would normally play. And of course, supportive housing is very much focused on health-related concerns that people have and providing them with a degree of extra support which forms part of the healthcare continuum. And that is why we feel that it is quite appropriate for us to request the province of Ontario to join in to these projects and to provide the kind of operating support that will allow us to provide, in particular, the health supports for this project and projects like it going forward, because supportive housing is a huge part of our housing action plan. I think, in fact, 18,000 units over the 10 years that the plan is meant to run, and we're determined to achieve those goals. Building more affordable housing was a priority before the pandemic. I think now it is more so a priority than ever, but we have to continue to move quickly. And the idea of our update today was to indicate to you just how quickly we can and we have moved with respect to this modular housing project, which will go from concept to people moving in a period of months. Something that is an accomplishment that I think we can be very proud of. Now we're going to get it done. On that note, I would like to call on our Deputy Mayor, who's been such a fighter for affordable housing and has led on much of these different projects, Anna Bailão, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. I'm pleased to be here today speaking as the Chair of Planning and Housing Committee, the City's Housing Advocate, and also City Councillor for Davenport, Ward 9, home of one of the identified sites. Housing affordability is an issue that affects every neighborhood in our city. Many families, and consequently, even many businesses. Whether you're looking for your first place to call your own, wanting to buy a home, or just a family arriving in Toronto, if you don't have a place to call your own that is safe and affordable, little else matters. And the COVID-19 crisis has certainly reinforced this fact. The most visible and distressing need for housing is for people who are living day to day in shelters, on our streets, in our parks, and on the edges of our city. The modular housing initiative will have a tremendous impact for the people who move in and will now have housing with the supports they need to succeed. This initiative will benefit our city as a whole. That is why we are committed to accelerating it and ensuring its success. I, too, want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff that have been working on this project. Moving these two projects, as the Mayor was explaining, from April to October of the same year to occupation, it's not easy. And it's only been possible because of the support and the persistence of our Mayor and the dedication of our staff. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you to our staff. Helping people to move out of the shelter system has always been our goal, and with the additional pressure brought on by COVID-19, this is now more important than ever. We will soon be working to select qualified and experienced nonprofit housing providers to manage the properties and provide support services for the residents. The city will continue to work with the housing providers after the new residents move in. Modular supportive housing is a cost-effective approach that delivers better health and housing outcomes. And let me just share some of the numbers. We had a cost of about $4,000 for a shelter bed a month pre-COVID. In the world that we have today with COVID, it's about $6,000. Now compare that with $2,000, an average of $2,000 of costs a month in supportive housing, where somebody can have their own bachelor unit and the much-needed supported needs. I think it's a pretty compelling case. That is why we need to work to ensure that these are just the first two of many other sites like this. I want to thank CMHC and the federal government for their participation with funds to help us with the capital investment needed to make this a reality. But I too want to call on the provincial government to assist us with the support on the operating costs. The health benefits, the social benefits, and the economic benefits make this a compelling case to join efforts to rapidly implement this kind of response. I believe the residents expect nothing else from all orders of government. So modular housing is just one of the many visions and targets outlined in our city's Toronto Housing 2020-2030 action plan, and we're making it happen. The initiative prioritizes the retention of city-owned sites by negotiating long-term land leases and will achieve the highest possible public benefits from city-owned land. And we obviously want these projects to succeed, and for that, we need our neighbors, we need our communities. And that is why I'm looking forward to working with my local community, engaging them in the engagement process that we're about to start, and making sure that we work towards welcoming these new neighbors to our community. We are moving forward on our commitment to ensure that Toronto is a place where families and individuals can live in safe and well-maintained and affordable housing. And I am sure that the residents of Davenport and Ward 9 will be doing just that. Thank you.
And then now, Councillor Crawford.
First of all, thank you very much, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Bailão, and good morning to everybody, even though I'm virtually. It's a great honor to be speaking to you today about modular supportive housing. Now, I've seen some of the pictures of modular supportive housing from other cities, such as Vancouver, and I've taken a look at the renderings which provide an idea as how this might look, and specifically in my ward on Macy Avenue. I'm advocating for the best possible initiative here in Ward 20 and demanding priority access for Scarborough residents to keep them close to home. Housing needs to continue as a growing concern all across the city, and one that is a priority. We are here to help provide a dignified response that will help people to move out of the shelter system and off the streets. The creation of high-quality, energy-efficient housing is important, as well as going beyond just putting a roof over somebody's head. This program is aiming to provide the necessary supports for residents to both encourage successful connections to the community. Now, we know that there are Scarborough residents who are experiencing homelessness, which is why I've asked staff to make sure this initiative will focus on helping those residents so that we can continue to strengthen the fabric of supports and relationships, and that we know our own communities need in the very best possible way. Creating vibrant and successful communities is our goal. Now, as the Mayor and Deputy Mayor Bailão has said, this is an accelerated timeline that responds to the vital need for housing. And I encourage all of us to work together with invaluable community input so that we can create a model of excellence as one of the city's first modular housing initiatives to go into the city. Now, myself and Deputy Bailão will be very involved, as they are in our wards, in the community engagement process, and I hope that each and every one of you will get involved as well. We want to work together to support and welcome our new neighbors into their new homes as members of the community and to help build a greater Scarborough and, of course, the city as a whole. Now, we know the need for supportive, affordable housing is very, very real, and we see the evidence of that absolutely every day. Wherever you go in the city, you see that. And as a result of COVID-19, I am honored to be part of Ward 20 and their efforts to support Scarborough in the face of a greater need than ever before in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. And may I just say to these two councillors a word of thanks to them, Deputy Mayor Bailão and Councillor Crawford, because as we find these sites that are suitable for the location of things like modular housing, and not limited to that, it is then something where the neighbourhood has to go through a transition to having some new neighbours. And I can only say that our experience across the city has been over and over again, that while people are initially interested, sometimes people are skeptical, sometimes people are curious. In the end, these neighborhoods basically adopt their new neighbors and become people that they associate with. They do things together. I was so heartened at Christmas time last year to know there were Christmas events put on for some of the people that moved into the neighborhoods in city facilities of this kind, that people end up taking gifts and getting to know and playing games with some of the residents and things like that that really make it into the kind of neighborhood that we want in Toronto. And so I know that you heard both of these councillors make reference to the fact they're going to work very closely on these projects, and I know that means working closely to make sure that we have these fit in very well to the neighborhoods in which they're going to be located. So on that note, we're ready to take your questions.
As a reminder, it's one question, one follow-up, and we also have Abby Bond, the Executive Director of the City's Housing Secretariat, on the line. She's also able to answer questions. So first up, we have Ashley from News Talk 1010.
Hi, good morning. Mayor Tory, I have a question about the funding aspect. Have you been in discussions with the province about what they can offer in terms of funding, and what will happen if the province does not offer that?
We're moving ahead with these projects that we're updating you on today, and we were very gratified to receive the funding support from the federal government through CMHC with respect to the capital, the construction costs, as it were, and the units themselves. But we think it is quite appropriate, and we've begun discussions with the province about them underwriting some or all of the operating costs, since this kind of supportive housing is very much a part of the healthcare continuum. Supportive housing of any kind is as much related to the healthcare system as it is to anything else, and so we think it would be appropriate for them to be partners with us, but this project will proceed regardless of their answer. We hope it will be positive.
Thank you. And I'm wondering, sorry, yes, I do have a follow-up. I'm wondering, even with the pandemic going on, if the city has consulted with these neighborhoods where these units will be located, if any concerns have been raised, and if so, how does the city plan on addressing those concerns?
Well, we engage in consultation anytime we're putting these projects onto city-owned land. I think everybody who would live in these different neighborhoods where we're putting Housing Now projects or these kinds of modular housing initiatives would know that the land was owned by the city. They know because we've made it very clear that we're looking at all of our land with the view in mind of establishing affordable and supportive housing. And again, there are lots of questions that arise at the beginning, but what I am gratified by is over the entire time that I've been mayor, those initial questions lead in the end to a very welcoming approach on the part of those neighborhoods for new neighbors that come, whether it's in a Housing Now project or something like these modular units, and that I know before too long, because in this case we're going to have people moving in well before the end of the year, you will find that those developments are ending up being very compatible with the neighborhoods in which they're located, thanks to the efforts of the councillors and the people who live around there now, who I know are determined to build the kind of city that welcomes and embraces everybody, including new neighbors.
Francine from the Toronto Star, you're up.
Hi. Good morning.
Morning.
Mayor Tory, on Monday night, two downtown businesses, the Bay and Best Buy, boarded up their windows. I'm wondering, do you know of any credible threat to storefronts in the city?
Well, it's up to the police to decide, obviously, what a credible threat is, and I was in touch with the police chief about this yesterday. We discussed it a couple of times, and obviously they're always gathering intelligence with respect to the activities that people might or might not engage in of this kind. I will just say this. This city has done itself proud in the way in which it has handled some very heartfelt protests that result from a great degree of anger and frustration about some of the issues to do with racism here and elsewhere. And I think that the Toronto way is to continue to do it that way. And I think the vast majority of those who share these concerns, which are all of the people of Toronto, frankly, would have no interest whatsoever in seeing the kind of activity we've seen elsewhere going on in our city, whether it's the looting or other damage to property or other misbehavior. And so I just think that while the police will monitor this, I'm very confident that the people of Toronto, the people who live here, the people who share the values, will not engage in that kind of conduct and will go about whatever protests they feel are in their hearts in the way that they have before.
Thank you. Thank you.
No follow-up? Okay. We have Jenny now from the Toronto Sun.
Oh, hi there, Mayor Tory. I just want to add to that question there. Do you know if City Hall is taking any extra security measures in light of these social media posts about a planned riot on June 6th?
Well, first of all, I reject utterly the notion that anybody other than people who are, really just people, the kind of people you often find stirring it up on social media and trying to get these kinds of things going. I reject the fact that there's any reasonable critical mass of people that are interested in any way, shape, or form in having any kind of a disturbance of that kind on June 6th or any other date. We don't share what we do with respect to changes in levels of security. I will just say to you that we rely on our Toronto Police Service to make sure that with regard to this building and every other building in the city, including public and private buildings, that they gather the intelligence they need to gather. They give us advice with respect to what needs to be done. But I think the real message in this case is to say to people, if you are one of those sorry trouble causers that I think by and large spend a lot of your time in your basement typing out these kinds of messages about this kind of activity, forget it. This is not the Toronto way. The police are going to be vigilant, as they are every day, to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen and to keep us all safe. And we can go about having whatever other protests or other kinds of commemorations may be necessary to move these issues forward on anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, but that's not going to be a part of it.
Jenny, go ahead.
And just given that this month is the 10-year anniversary of the G20 summit, which saw over 1,000 people wrongly arrested, police cars burned, businesses vandalized, what do you make of these calls for rioting, and how do we not have that repeat happen of the G20?
Well, I think everybody has learned some lessons from the G20, as you do from all of these unfortunate incidents, in terms of how to better handle these things, in terms of respecting people's rights and so on. But at the core, these things only happen not because average Torontonians decide they're going to riot or decide they're going to start doing damage to property, but because a small group of agitators, usually from outside of the city and even sometimes outside of the country, though that's less likely at this particular point in time, decide they're going to do this to further their own perverted aims. And I just would say that, same as I said a minute ago, we have no use for that kind of behavior here. We have no use for those people trying to stir up that sort of trouble. We are very focused on trying to address in a meaningful way the issues that have caused a lot of hurt for people here and elsewhere on this continent, and we're going to go about continuing to do that. We will rely on the police to keep the city safe, and I'm sure that this tiny little group of people who want to engage in this kind of conduct for reasons I can't possibly fathom will perhaps just stay in the basement typing out those messages, and we'll make sure to the greatest extent possible that's exactly what happens.
Okay, last question will be Chris from Global.
Hi there. The Board of Health Chair is renewing its call for the province to collect race-based and socioeconomic data. Do you think it's necessary, and why do you think that?
I think the collection of data by the province on a basis that looks at a number of demographics, including race, would be very helpful. And that is why the City of Toronto decided to do so with respect to the information that's being gathered by our public health unit in regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's why, quite frankly, we moved to have the police service also begin to collect race-based data, because it allows you to look and, without speculating and without having people talk in a way that's ill-informed, look at the facts and see if a disproportionate burden of any kind of problem is being resting on the shoulders of people who might be from a particular demographic group, whether it be racially or otherwise. And so I think this would be a good step forward for 21st century Ontario to take this step and to collect this data. And I think it would be something that would add to the initiatives already undertaken by the City of Toronto, which we believe are the right things for us to do to be best informed and to make sure we look after groups that are often found to be most vulnerable.
Okay, that's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.